17 pooled studies found a pretty big reason not to put too much trust in a normal A1c. When researchers checked A1c against the glucose tolerance test, where you drink a sugar load and they watch what your body does with it, the standard A1c cutoff of 6.5 picked up only about half of the diabetes cases. So when A1c says diabetes, it's usually right. The problem is what it misses. And not just diabetes cases that are already there, but also the years of insulin resistance leading up to it. By the time your A1c or fasting glucose starts changing, you can already be pretty far into this disease process. And the natural progression is your muscle and your liver cells start responding less to insulin. So your pancreas compensates by pumping out more insulin to move the same glucose out of your bloodstream. It's almost like having to turn the volume higher and higher to get the same sound. And for a while that works, but eventually your pancreas just can't keep up anymore and it starts burning out, and at that point the compensation stops. And this is the point when your A1c and glucose finally start going up. But at this stage, we're looking at a very late stage of the whole disease process. And this is why you don't want to rely just on your A1c and you want to get a fasting insulin. It's a separate test and unfortunately it's not routinely checked. And as a practical target, I personally like to see fasting insulin below 8 and ideally closer to 5, but the exact numbers vary by different labs and different assays that they use. And fasting insulin by itself still doesn't tell you the whole story. There is a better way to use that number. If you get a fasting insulin and fasting glucose drawn together, you can calculate something called HOMA-IR, which is basically an estimate of how insulin resistant you are. So what you do is you take your fasting glucose and multiply it by your fasting insulin and then divide it by 405. Now there isn't one perfect cutoff because it varies between different studies and different populations, but as a general rule, I want HOMA-IR to be less than 1.5. So if your doctor has never mentioned this test, definitely bring it up to them at your next physical. Fasting insulin is a fairly inexpensive test even if your insurance doesn't cover it. And nowadays, there are many places where you can just order those labs yourself. Now, I have zero affiliation with this company. It's just a place that I use personally to get my own labs. But you can order fasting insulin through a company called Own Your Labs. And last I checked, it was about $14 for fasting insulin. And again, this is not sponsored by them. This is just one of the cheapest places that I found for myself. And at this point, there's lots of companies popping up offering cheap pricing for labs. So places like Jason Health or Walking Labs, Function Health or Mito Health. And then your regular labs like Quest and LabCorp also offer direct-to-consumer tests that don't require doctor's orders.